So you want to drive the auto shift. Well, that's why we're here. Over the next few minutes, we're going to take a look at the components you'll be using, proper startup, selecting a starting gear, normal driving operations, and proper shutdown procedures. We'll also answer some of the most frequently asked questions we receive at the end of this program. And what we don't cover in this video, you'll find detailed in your driver's instruction manual. In fact, we recommend you read through the manual before you drive the auto shift, just to be sure you're thoroughly familiar with what you've got working for you. So, let's get started. Now, there are two key auto shift components in the cab. The gear display, which will display the gear you're in and the gear you're moving to, and a shifter to select different operating modes. Eaton offers two shifters, lever and push button. Regardless of the configuration, the shifter has 5 operating modes: reverse, neutral, drive, hold or manual, and low. There are also up and down buttons, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. A service light, which may alert you to the event of potential transmission problems or service needs. Now, different OEMs may provide their own shifters and gear displays, but their functions are the same. If you're not using Eaton design components, just be sure to refer to your vehicle manual for instructions on the location and use of your components. Now, let's take auto shift out on the road. As with any vehicle, be sure to use proper safety procedures. Buckle up and be sure the parking or spring brake is set. You also want to be sure the shifter is in neutral, and I'll tell you why that's especially important in a few minutes. Next, depress the clutch and turn the key to the on position. At power up, auto shift will go through a self-test. You'll notice that the service light comes on and goes off, and the gear display shows a solid N, indicating that auto shift has registered that you're in neutral. If the service light remains lit or the gear display shows a dash, auto shift has not registered neutral. We'll go over what to do in that case a little later in this program. Assuming you've achieved normal power up, just start the engine. Then release the clutch pedal. Releasing the clutch pedal lets auto shift register input shaft speed. This is important because if auto shift doesn't register input shaft speed, you won't be able to get into your initial starting gear. Now, the process of selecting a starting gear is the same whether you select reverse, drive, hold, or low. First, apply your service brakes, release the parking brake, and take the clutch all the way to the floor. This stops the input shaft, so auto shift can get into gear. Then choose your startup mode. The gear display will flash the gear you're going to. If the display is also showing down arrows, it's an indication that the input shaft hasn't slowed down. Continue to depress the clutch pedal until the arrows go off. Once the arrows go off, the gear display may continue to flash, telling you that the gear hasn't fully engaged. Slowly let out on the clutch pedal until the number is solid. If you selected drive or hold, you'll be able to select different starting gears using the up and down buttons, depending on how your vehicle is programmed. If the display flashes the gear you want, again, let the clutch out a little until the gear display is solid with that gear. Now, it's important to choose a starting gear that's appropriate for the load and grade conditions. In other words, the starting gear should be the same as the gear you'd choose using a manual transmission. Auto shift will remember and continue to use that starting gear in drive or hold unless you choose another starting gear or until you shut down the unit. All right, when your gear display is solid with the gear you want, slowly release the clutch and you're ready to go. If you selected drive, auto shift will automatically upshift or downshift without using the clutch. During the shifts, the gear display will flash the gear you're going to, and when you're in gear, it will become solid with the new gear. One note, in drive, auto shift will adapt to the changing conditions of the vehicle. But right after power up or after changing loads, auto shift needs to learn the new conditions. While learning, it may hold a gear instead of upshifting. Simply push the up button to start the upshift. It may take 3 or 4 shifts for auto shift to learn the new conditions. After that, it'll handle upshifts and downshifts automatically. Also, when coasting to a stop in the lower gears, auto shift won't finish downshifting until the driver gets back on the throttle. This is normal for the auto shift. Now, let's take a look at hold or manual mode. When hold is selected, whether you're moving or not, auto shift doesn't shift under normal conditions unless you use the up and down buttons on the shifter. In other words, as you accelerate and decelerate, press the up or down button to request a shift. If a shift can't be completed due to engine RPM and road speed, the shifter will signal a tone telling you that it can't shift. Just like hold, low mode can be selected at any speed or at a stop. If you selected low from a stop, it'll engage and maintain first gear. Selecting low while moving, say driving down long grades or when coming to a stop, will optimize engine braking by initiating downshifts at higher RPMs and under normal conditions inhibiting upshifts. Now let's recap all of this. Remember that any of your modes, drive, hold, or low, can be selected at any speed or from a stop. So if you started out in low and wanted to upshift, simply select hold and use the buttons to shift. Or select drive and let auto shift automatically. If you're in drive and want to take over the shifting, simply select hold and use the buttons to shift. Let's move on to reverse mode. When using reverse, first remember to select the proper reverse gear for your load and conditions. Some models have multiple reverse gears, so we suggest you refer to your driver's manual for information on the number of reverse gears available for your transmission model. You should also keep in mind that in order to engage a reverse gear, you should be at a stop or moving at less than 2 miles per hour. Selecting reverse from neutral will engage low reverse. The gear display will flash the gear you are going to. If the display is also showing down arrows, it's an indication that the input shaft hasn't slowed down. Continue to depress the clutch pedal until the arrows go off. When they do, the gear display may continue to flash, telling you that the gear hasn't fully engaged. Slowly let out on the clutch pedal until the R is solid. Then use your up and down buttons to engage your other reverse gears. If the display flashes the gear you want, slowly let out on the clutch to fully engage the gear. Remember, we've indicated that auto shift only requires you to use the clutch at startup, when selecting your starting gear, and when stopping. So, when stopping the vehicle, regardless of your driving mode, depress the clutch as you come to a stop. If you're shutting down, select neutral. Release the clutch when the display is a solid N. Again, be sure this is a solid neutral. Then set the parking brake. One note, after the key is turned off, you may hear the transmission make shifting noises for about 20 seconds. This is normal for the auto shift. That's it. That's all you need to know to drive the auto shift. If you still have questions, as we've said, there's a short question and answer segment at the end of this program. We recommend that you watch the Q&A segment and that you read your driver instruction manual before driving the auto shift. Not only will it give you useful tips, but it will walk you step by step through each of the procedures we've discussed here, as well as a number of others, including basic maintenance, troubleshooting, PTO operation, and diagnostics. As always, if you need more information, contact your Eaton Road Ranger Service Network at 1-800-826-HELP. Road Ranger, more time on the road. Even though driving the auto shift is pretty straightforward, we get a lot of questions about special conditions. So let's take them one at a time. What are the best conditions for using hold and low modes? Hold should be used whenever you want to select the shifts instead of letting auto shift select them for you. For example, when you're moving around the yard and on some grade conditions. We recommend you use low mode anytime you want to maximize engine braking and minimize the use of the brake pedal. For example, when driving down long grades or when coming to a stop. What should I do if my service light comes on? During power-up, the service light will come on and go off. This is normal operation. But if your service light comes on and stays on, or comes on while driving, it means AutoShift has detected a fault, and you'll want to get to a service facility as soon as possible. We also recommend that you note the driving conditions when the fault occurred in order to help the repair facility diagnose the problem. For instance, was it hot or cold, wet or dry? Were you traveling on a grade or over flat terrain? You should also note any change in available gears after the fault occurred. If AutoShift detects a fault, in some cases it's possible to reset the system in order to drive to a service center. To give it a try, just shut the vehicle down for at least 2 minutes. This full power down may be enough to get you to the shop. For more detailed information on diagnosing faults, refer to your driver's instruction manual. How does AutoShift work with cruise control? AutoShift is totally compatible with cruise control. If a shift is required while cruise control is active, AutoShift will temporarily interrupt cruise while the shift is performed, and then automatically re-engage cruise when the shift is complete. Why does the engine brake occasionally come on during a shift? Depending on the conditions, AutoShift can activate the engine brake in order to bring the engine down faster for an upshift. This can happen even if the engine brake dash switch is off. What if I shut the truck off or stall while the transmission is in gear? It's very important to select neutral before shutting the truck off. If the truck is shut down or stalls in gear, AutoShift may become locked in gear. The transmission will attempt to get to neutral during the next power-up if the shifter is in neutral. If neutral is achieved, a solid N appears on the display. But if neutral can't be achieved, a dash will appear on the display and the engine won't start. If a dash appears during power-up and the lever is in neutral, here's what you do. First, turn the key off and let the transmission power down for at least 2 minutes. Then, depress the brake pedal and release the parking brake. Depress the clutch, but don't push it all the way to the floor or you'll make contact with the clutch brake. And make sure the shifter is in neutral. AutoShift will attempt to shift into neutral once you turn the key on, but you may have to slightly release the brake pedal to help let the torque off the driveline. Once it reaches neutral, a solid N will appear on your gear display and the truck will start. If a dash still appears after this procedure, get the vehicle to a service center. What if N appears on the gear display after I've selected a startup gear? As we explained earlier, you should release the clutch after the engine is started so AutoShift can register the input shaft speed. If AutoShift doesn't get a chance to do that, it doesn't know that the engine has been started and it won't go into gear. Just release the clutch pedal to let the input shaft turn and then push it back to the floor to select a starting gear. What if the gear display still shows down arrows after I've selected a starting gear and held the clutch pedal all the way to the floor for several seconds? If this happens, it means the input shaft isn't slowing down for the AutoShift to engage a starting gear. This could be due to a misadjusted clutch or clutch linkage. Get the truck to a service facility to repair the problem.
Well, we've covered some of the most frequently asked questions, but if we didn't answer your question, check your driver's manual. Again, it has detailed information on the procedures we've outlined here. As always, if you need more information or support, contact your Eaton Road Ranger Service Network at 1-800-826-HELP. Road Ranger, more time on the road.